Take a defensive driving class, you know everything that they talk about, right? You've heard it all before, you know it, you've been practicing it for however many years since you started driving. But statistically, if you've taken a defensive driving class in the last 12 months, you're 72% less likely to get in a car wreck. Now, why is that? It's because it's just bringing it to the front of your mind. So, and looking, and it's teaching you in driving what to watch for, the avoidance. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today, so that you're 72% less likely to have a problem down the road. But, so as we, well, let's see. Yeah, technology has never been my strong suit. You know, unfortunately, there's a saying or a quote by a famous orator, Bruce Springsteen, if you're good, you're always looking over your shoulder. And you can read that in a lot of ways, and you can, you know, I could have a lot of meaning attached to that. But today, there are two reasons you want to look over your shoulder. One, because you want to be aware of potential pitfalls and what's looming behind you. And number two is you want to make sure somebody has your back. And so we want to talk about that. I'll talk more about the bad stuff, the pitfalls, and Cameron can talk more about making sure you've covered your back. So, first track, because if you know where people are having problems, it's easier to avoid them. If you're paying attention, if you're focused, if you know where this is something I need to be alert and more diligent about, you're going to do a better job of documenting your file, or you're going to do a better job of prevention. Missing deadlines. You know, one of the things that, you know, as a practical matter, this is something that's so easy, but yet it can be so, it is one of the most common issues I see in legal malpractice cases. You know, the fact is, deadlines are deadlines. There's a certain number of days. You've got the mailbox rule, even though no one ever uses mailboxes, but we have a mailbox rule, but it's a deadline. And so it is one of those things that is easy to address, but you have to focus on it. Things to think about. You have to have a calendar system that's easy to use. I hate Outlook calendars. I hate them. I hate when other people put things on my Outlook calendar. So I have my own calendar. It's written, it's paper, but it works for me. And I have, from time to time, counseled lawyers, younger lawyers, look, my system may not be the system that works for you. Head over to Office Depot. I mean, they have everything. Some people have the sticker, you know, one of our lawyers has got little sticky notes everywhere. Whatever works, a big massive calendar, you know, the big ones that you hang on the wall, a white, whatever works. You have to have a system that works for you. You know? Okay, I've got to write a brief right here, so, okay. Make sure the whole staff is trained on your system and the firm's system, or if you're a solo practitioner, your system, and make sure your staff has a backup system. You want to have redundancy. You want every file in your calendar system, and you want every person in your office to understand how important deadlines are. Those kind of things sound, again, we all know this, but it's a good reminder to think about, is this working for me? Is it still working for me? Another trap, and one that sadly I think Cameron knows way too much about, is substance abuse, mental disorders, and different disabilities. And a lot of times I see this in dysfunctional law firms, or I see, you know, or it is the cause of a law firm becoming dysfunctional too. And Cameron can speak more to that, and because with the bar, and Cameron took the Lawyer's Assistance Program, we see that there is somebody who has your back even at that point, even when you're facing some of those kind of issues.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Texas Lawyer Assistance Program. I didn't start my career there. I was a teacher, a school administrator, went to law school at night, and then was a probate lawyer for about 25 plus years in Houston. So I did grow up in Dallas, so I'm always especially glad to be back here in Dallas. I retired, but when I went back to work, I didn't want a stressful job. I wanted to be with lawyers. I didn't need to know the law, and I wanted no stress. and that's TLAP. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not passionate about helping people at TLAP, but I tell you this story so you'll know I know what your morning is like. I know what your afternoon will be like. And I know how hard it is to keep in the front and center of your mind my topic, which is lawyer wellness. TLAP, most importantly, is confidential. We never tell anyone anything. You can tell I came out of 6th grade, can't you? But I use every technique I can to help you keep these very simple principles in mind. And like Alison, I'm not going to bring you new news about how to stay well. I'm just going to help you keep it in the front of your mind, keep it simple, and then this trick, actually do the suggestions. Now, just so you're warned, I probably won't have time for the pop test as a teacher, but I am giving you a homework assignment. And Terry has committed to checking on you to be sure you are practicing these wellness tips. Now, TLAP is confidential. It's also voluntary. And we are all about helping lawyers, judges, and law students. That's all we do, and we do it 24/7. I'm the person on call until next Tuesday morning or so. So if you would rather talk about your issues at 3 this morning, that's fine with me, or if you want to save it for the weekend, we answer the phone or make quick return calls quickly to be of help to you. Now, this is about really the great responsibility you have in helping your colleagues. Just look around your table there. These are your colleagues. These are your friendly colleagues. And we want to help everyone. In my day, the culture at my law firm was to have 3 martinis at lunch. Well, that didn't work for me, and soon the law firm began to change its culture. And no one ever talked about a problem. If you were depressed, if you were anxious, if you were alcohol, drugs, depressed, anxious, or stressed, no one ever talked about it. Happily, that culture has changed, and we now nationally, every law bar association is trying to help lawyers stay healthy. I have to give you some scary figures. There was a recent survey by the American Bar Association that said out of 13,000 lawyers nationwide, 20+% have problems with alcohol. Now, the regular population, normal people, non-lawyers, have about a 10% report. And on depression, 28% of lawyers have experienced depression during their practice. We're 100,000 lawyers. So that would be every member of the Dallas bar and maybe plus every member of the Houston bar. 28% have experienced depression. 19 have experienced anxiety. That's my personal favorite. Now, this isn't the anxiety that gets you going, gets the deposition prepared, gets your court hearing going. This is the one that wakes you up at night, worries you, you can't interact well with your family. It's chronic anxiety. And 23%, that would be almost 25,000 lawyers, have had stress. I think that's a miscount. I think it's 95%. But guess what group is the most affected by this? We used to think it was us seniors, those of us in the room that have a few gray hairs. But really, it's those lawyers under 30 that have the highest percent of these conditions. Now, we're help, we're confidential. Anything we do to help you is free, and if you don't have insurance, then we have a trust to help you with money. So there's really hardly any excuse not to help us. So I'm going to use Dina as an example. Let's make her the troublemaker, okay?
That's true.
Okay, good. I've made a good choice. Robert is going to be our helper. And we'll pick on Terry. Oh, I know you, and I'm so proud of you. North UNT. Just refresh my memory. Your first name. Rebecca. Okay, so Rebecca's going to be our volunteer. We all know there's something wrong with Dina. We don't know what it is. It could be alcohol, drugs. It could be depression, anxiety. But you know, Robert has been her lifelong friend in practice, and he wants to get her help. He doesn't have to be a clinician to call TLAP. There's something wrong with Dina. Now remember, we're confidential. We will never tell that Robert was the person that called Dina. Never will his name be mentioned when we reach out to help her. And what we will do is reach out to help with one of our about 800 volunteers statewide that have had alcohol, drug, depression, anxiety, and are practicing wellness now. Rebecca is one of those 800. So she will reach out, offer peer support, help get her into groups. There are groups that meet right here in the Dallas area around substance abuse, depression, and anxiety. And they're posted on our website. And we'll both stay and answer any questions, but there are groups available. Peer support and group support is brain chemistry. The scientists tell us that's what makes us feel positive. You don't think about yourself in evolutionary times, do you? But see, we were all pack animals. We hung together, and that's what affects our brain science when we're with other people. You're feeling it now, aren't you? You're among friends. Maybe you have one unfriendly person in the room, but you're among friends right now. And that's a brain chemistry wellness.
So tell us, when people call, is it partner, is it other people in your firm, or is it, what does it, or is it across the board?
Across the board. We get a lot of firm calls, we get a lot of, my friend is a solo call, we get a lot of calls from even, say, the grievance people call confidentially and say someone needs help. But we never give out any information to anybody. It could be a neighbor, it could be a client, it could be, I saw Terry Hill in here and you wouldn't believe how she acted, you better check her out. So it could be someone that doesn't even know you. But it's help, care, and concern. That's all we do.
So
Yes, Dina?
What if I'm such a troublemaker that Rebecca reaches out to me and I don't want to talk to Rebecca?
Great question, voluntary. She doesn't have to accept the help. We have no smoking gun to say you have to get help. But see, we know Dina's trouble. We're going to make her an alcoholic. We know it's going to get worse. And she will know how to get in touch with Rebecca and about TLAP for the next time around. So it's voluntary. Now we could have, we'll make Terry this time, call and say, I need help. We have a lawyer in Houston this morning that called on my way up here on the real early, 6:30 or something, that I need help. So you're helping your colleagues or you're helping another person. Now we've kind of decided to split this up a little bit. I'm going to give you 2 pieces on wellness down the way, but why does this matter in a grievance malpractice talk? Ethically, you have the duty to zealously represent your client. And that's why you get ethics credit for anything you do. That's your ethical duty. Well, how can you possibly zealously represent your client if you yourself are unwell? If you're having drugs, mental health issues, you can't give it 100%. So that's why my topic, the rest of my topic, will be skills for your own personal wellness, not only to help others. And consider our points, and don't have to hire Alison or one of her.
Dang it.
So if you do need help, she does great
I
help.
think a lot of law students got out of school back, the under 30s, got out of school in 08, 09, 2010. There were no jobs. And a lot of lawyers were hanging their own shingle. And I think there's so much more pressure. There's a lot, we educate our lawyers pretty well on the law in law school, but I don't think there's as much education on the business of practicing law. And so there you are, you've never even learned how to set up a file, and you're, hung shingle, and more credit to you. I mean, so that's one of the areas where I think it's so important that you find a mentor, you find someone who can help you, who can work through some of these issues. From the purpose of what's your first step? What would your first advice be? It would be, I guess, your number one, right? I
Yes.
mean,
This is Terry Hill at age 1, my little picture there, see her? Doesn't it look like same hair and everything? But this is my teacher's message. You must, you shall, I order you to make yourself number one at some time during every single day. Now note I didn't say on the 4th of July holiday. I didn't say next Saturday. I said every day you have to make yourself number one. Now Southwest Airlines makes a good point when they say when trouble arises, put the oxygen on you first, and then you can help someone else. So you absolutely must make yourself number one. I would say this lunch, this gorgeous building, the camaraderie you're experiencing, and ethics credit is your moment today. And maybe you have some other moment. But you've got to put aside family, clients, bosses, some time and take care of you. If I were to give you the next 3 or 4 ones, the next thing I would say, easier for me than you because of my wisdom from gray hair, ask for help. And I'm stretching my hand out here. I didn't have any trouble asking Dina, could I use you as an example? I can't even work a laptop. I had no trouble saying, Alison, will you do the laptop for me?
and we're in big trouble.
Be my flipper. There's no shame about that. I know help works. Now here's the trick. Alison may have even felt very IT knowledgeable that she was able to do that. So often in asking for help, the person that gives the help gets that dopamine surge. This one, number 3, ask for, you are good enough. I'm not of the tattoo vintage, but I've considered having this tattooed on my knee or somewhere where I could lift my skirt and see it. Because see, we're perfectionists, right? And that's a good thing in the practice of law.
As we go through this and you see I will tell you, you would be amazed how many people have been there. And this is a story, I was back in the day where no one talked about if you had depression or, any kind of issue like that. Nobody talked about it. Women in particular, you just wanted to fit in. At least that was my experience. I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be special or different. I knew I was as good, but I didn't want to distinguish myself as a woman versus I'm a partner in this law firm of good lawyers. But after my 3rd child, I had a terrible postpartum depression. And I came back to work and I just wasn't able to manage. And I was driving to work one day and I remember thinking, and I had this thought that just flashed through my mind, and it was, I could just drive right into that pole and fix everything. I don't have to go in, I don't have to deal with all this. And just the thought that flashed through my brain for that split second, I turned left instead of right, and I went straight to my doctor and said, okay, this kid, he gave me a depression. And so, and it's your fault. And so when I went into my firm later that day, and I was like, guess what? I'm gonna be on Prozac. And to their credit, and this is an example of find someone who has your back, my partners all were like, that's great, we're behind you. Take a few more weeks off because you've been really bad around. We'll support you on it. And so I took more time off, and one day I woke up and the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders, but I look back on that, and when you're living it, you don't see it. And remember that when you're dealing with colleagues who you think, boy, they're just not the same. When they're living it, they don't see it.
Right. And that's when you pick up the phone and you call and say, I don't know what's going on with Dina, but can you help her? And this is so important. It's the same message, ask for help. But if you yourself don't recognize it, count on your friends to be that help. Now this business of you are good enough, Alison at that point was trying to be perfect. New mother, partner in a firm, all of this. But you have gotten into law school, you have survived law school, you've taken and passed a bar exam, you've probably current on your payments, you likely have a job, and you have done it all. You are good enough. And so give yourselves, with women lawyers, I'm tempted to say, pat the person on the left on the back. You are good enough. We don't give that praise to each other, but you are good enough, and that's a healthy thought. It is a brain chemistry thought. A couple others to mention right here, and then I'm going to tell you particularly what to look for. Set boundaries. I have friends that one of them is 91 years old, and I got licensed, 34, something like that, years ago. I met her at the Association of Women Attorneys in Houston. And we have 7 of us that still bond together after all those years and have birthday lunches. And this 91-year-old retired judge is quite a pistol. There's another woman in the group that's about that age, Ruby Sondak, who was the first woman appointed on the Supreme Court. So it's a lively little group. When I retired, they said, you're it. You make all the arrangements. With all these lawyers and judges, you want me to plan a lunch? Have you ever heard so many excuses? And it stressed me. And I finally drew a boundary and said, no, I'm not going to do it. You know, people-pleasing fear, they won't like me, they'll kick me out. But I am so much happier. We take turns, we do it, and it's still floating along. We have something set in August for the 91-year-old. God willing, she makes it. 92. One more healthy thing, make connections. This is the one that saved me. You're doing it in this organization. When I moved to Austin to work in TLAP, what was the first group I joined? The Travis County Women Lawyers Association. And again, I've learned the community there and made great connections. These people teach you how to practice, they hold you up when you're down, they help you celebrate when you need to. Make those connections. Again, remember, science tells us it's brain chemistry. Now, before sending it back over to do this, so you don't have to do that, here's what I want you to look for with lawyers. There are a lot of symptoms of anxiety and depression, and they pretty much are the same symptoms and the same treatments. Isolation. Think about the lawyer who hasn't been showing up. Isolation is a very apparent symptom if you're looking for it among your friends, because that's the person that's having trouble. And why is that bad? Because they're listening only to their own negative voice at home or in their office late at night. I'm not any good. I can't do this. I'm exhausted. All those kind of talks. Irritability is another sign. I just thought we were a grumpy profession. I mean, among judges and lawyers. But bad temper, more so than usual, or periodic bad temper is a sign of mental health issues or possible addiction. Financial stress. And just listen for the words people say. I just can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm not worth this. Listen for those negative words. And especially watch people under 30 or who really 40 or 45, but they look like they're under 30. So watch for the youngster practicer, because that's where you can offer the most help with someone in trouble. The only wrong thing is do nothing.
That's particularly true. A lot of second career lawyers are older, and you know, with gray hair, you assume, well, they know more than I do, and well, we do, but as a practical, but as a practical matter, many times, you know, I have several clients that have hired me as general counsel. They got out of law school as second career lawyers, hung a shingle. And I did everything from go in and help them set up files and you know, well, here's how you can do billing that works, and to giving them advice on their advertising and their website, to dealing with client issues from time to time that come up. And I think that's a big part of it is when you're a newer lawyer or you're dealing with newer lawyers, they're more susceptible. And financial distress, and you mentioned that, I think for me, when I look at where I have clients who are in serious trouble, it's not because they made a mistake. I mean, we all make mistakes. It's because they tried to just cover it up, or because they really did cross that line and they stole money, or they, you know, and so often it's the financial stress. These are not bad people. It's just they're so stressed. A lot of times they're young lawyers whose wives don't work maybe, or young women whose husbands aren't working, student loan debt. You all know, you all see that, but just be aware of the kind of pressure that puts on people. Because I think that if you know the pressure, then you know what to watch for. It's like, I don't know, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got related to alcohol was, you know, if you're gonna have a drink at night, do not text or email your client after that, okay? And so I kind of have a rule, you know, I don't answer the phone after 8 o'clock because I may well have had a glass of wine. But I mean, it's things like that where it may not even be a problem, but you know what? And I learned this because I talked to one of my kids' teachers. It's a problem. Even if I don't have an alcohol problem, I have a problem that day because I had a pretty bad conversation with a teacher that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had a glass of wine. So I'm telling all my secrets. I don't know how you did this to me. But again, it's not my fault.
That made me think of something. Here's a tip for the clients that had drinks too much. Always call them by 7 a.m. because they are wide awake, they haven't had a drink, they are racing out the door, and you just want to tell them your hearing is set for such and such a day, and they're not going to argue, they're not going to complain, because it's a perfect time to call them. Another tip I never used when you have an outrageous client and you just can't take it anymore, chronic caller. Then, now remember, I haven't used it, but it made me feel good to always know I could use it. In the middle of my conversation, hang up, because they don't think you're going to hang up on yourself. So that might save you some stress and dealing.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and just knowing I can do it. If you can't get through the call, you use it.
Okay. Let's move on. So, and this is something that poor client communication is something I see in malpractice cases, and often it is because people, and often it is with lawyers who just don't want to deal with bad news. They don't want to convey bad news. They don't want to admit, well, gee, I missed a deadline, or I my New Year's resolution one year was, okay, I'm going to do the one thing that I really don't want to do that day first. I'm just going to get it out of the way. I'm going to make the one call I don't want to make. I'm going to write the one letter I'm dreading, whatever it is, to get it out of the way. I think lawyers, and this is particularly true with younger lawyers who are trying to develop clients, is we tend to give our clients unrealistic expectations by what we're telling them, by promises we may not be able to keep, by, it can be everything from how much it's going to cost to get there to I can win a summary judgment. Well, if you're in Dallas County and you're a defendant, there's a lot of fact issues out there. You're probably not going to win a summary judgment. It's any aspect of the case, and I think there's a tendency to kind of get the client going, and by golly, we're going to take them to court, we're going to win, and we're going to get you your business back. Well, you know what? No, you're probably not. 97% of the cases settle. You see, it is a realistic expectation. If you have a client who has realistic expectations, then when you get a realistic result, you're not going to have a problem. Clients who aren't informed, one of the things that I think juries tend to be less forgiving of lawyers about is the kind of things that fall in that public perception, the negative public perception of lawyers. They don't return phone calls. They never told me what was going on. The things that the public perceives negatively about us are the things that jurors tend to jump on. I find jurors tend to be very forgiving of just mistakes. I made the best call I could in the middle of trial. could I have done this differently? With hindsight, yeah, I wish I had. But where I see issues is where you're not returning phone calls, you're not being responsive, you're not keeping your client informed. There will be a day where you'll have to, I think all of us will have had to make a phone call to a client and say, I made a mistake. I didn't get something filed, I didn't get an expert designated, I raised this point in a brief, but I didn't raise this other point. And do not, when you do that, and I can't, 99.999% of the time, when you miss a deadline to respond to requests for admissions, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter, and you're not going to get sued. But if you don't tell the client, yeah, you're going to get sued every time. So it is really a matter of when you make a mistake, you tell the client, look, you don't say, oh my God, I was negligent, call my E&O carrier. Nothing like, you just say, here's what happened, here's the plan to fix it, and we'll go forward. It may create, a conflict situation. You want to be sure and address that if it did. If you have questions about it, ask someone. I try to, we try not to fix it. My firm, we try not to fix our own mistakes because, you know what, sometimes you can just start digging a hole. And, I mean, who here has not had a file that's just snake bit? It's a legal term. Just whatever, it starts out wrong. You get the client's address wrong on the very first letter, and it just goes downhill from there. Those kind of things. Better to let someone else come in and say, could you get this motion to undeem handled for me, or whatever it is that happened. But so I think it's important to talk to your client, disclose things like that, but at the same time recognize it's going to be okay. I've never had a lawsuit that didn't get resolved, ever. And I challenge anybody in this room to tell me that they did. It's going to be okay. Let's see. The other thing I would say is you have to be nice to your clients. I mean, right? It's like customer service. And I think that sometimes, especially when you're dealing with consumer clients, as opposed to corporate clients, I think there's people you don't like, and we can talk about that later maybe, but it's important to be nice to them, because if you have a contentious relationship, then it just adds to a level of dissatisfaction that over time creates more and more of an issue.
This might be a good time to mention number 6. If you're in that bad place, bad experience, bad client, everything going wrong, there's a free, simple way that all the current research talks about. It's called the gratitude list. And that is an attitude adjustment that if you practice it, will be immediate, because you are changing your brain thinking. And in a bad place, you go to a good place. Now, I don't know necessarily if you did it one time, if it would be effective, and it's to be written if possible. But I could list the gratitude I have. I get to come back to Dallas. I get to be in a beautiful building. I didn't ever get to belong to the Dallas women lawyers because I didn't practice here, but I get to have lunch with you. And I mean, I actually packed my lunch that I'm going to eat later. And so I have a great trip back to Houston. I'm listening to Eckhart Tolle's book. He's very good on being in the moment. And so gratitude list. If I had a worry before I made that list, I'm doing it now. Try to pick a time of day and take 30 seconds. It might be when you're number 1. But you're going to hear about this every day. Kindness and connection is the second thing we learned from Berkeley.
Now, there's a point there on kindness. This is a practice tip. Okay, so I'll throw his name out there because he knows I do this. He thinks it's hilarious. But Chris Wheel. He is known around Dallas as a very difficult, it's his shtick. He's a very nice person if you ever met him personally, but he's just, in my view, his shtick is he's pretty in your face. And my way of dealing with lawyers like that is to be so sweet. Oh, Chris, oh, thanks. Oh, I know I should have gotten that done sooner. I'm so sorry. You're such a marshmallow for doing that for me. Thank you. He gets his little pink, and it works with a lot of lawyers. So, so it works with the other side too sometimes. So, not always, but sometimes.
Number 7 of your 10 homework points are the other thing you'll hear about. Relaxation, another word that doesn't fit with lawyer. Meditation and mindfulness. That is the hottest topic. If there were a silver bullet on wellness across the universe, it's being in the moment. Now, we at TLAP are 3 lawyers and an admin person, and at 3 o'clock every day, we do a 15 to 20 minute meditation, and it's little bells on someone's phone. Not mine, no IT. I did want to show you my non-IT diary, and it got me to Dallas, and I'm very proud of it, and I just can't give it up. Anyway, so we meditate. Now, I would frankly never meditate, but it's peer pressure that makes me do it. We yell out to each other, are you going to do it? And I don't know that I'm doing it perfectly. I just breathe. What I've learned is by doing this, if someone comes in that I find annoying, maybe his name is Chris, maybe it's another name, I can take that moment and be still in myself. I learned that I control my own reaction. So I would say try it. There's lots of information about it on TLAP, but relax, meditate, be mindful, even yoga. I do yoga, not a pretty sight, but it helps me be in the moment.
So if you ever are at Thompson Coe at 3 in the afternoon and the bells go off and all the lawyers are there, you'll know that we've all adopted Cameron's.
No,
Yeah. So, okay, another thing to watch for is, I call them red flag clients. It's, again, if you know going in, this is a little bit higher risk of a representation, a little bit higher, a little bit, it's going to be a little more trouble than normal. If you know that going in, then you can handle it. You can spend the time, do those extra few steps that you might not otherwise do. Clients who are in financial distress. Okay, so I was talking to a bunch of bankruptcy lawyers. It was hilarious. I was like, you should never take clients who have financial distress, and they're all going. But look, that's different. What I'm talking about is if you have a client who is really up against the wall, I have got to have money. I need that client. Again, there's a motivation there that's over and above the law, right? It's over and above our judicial system, and it makes people do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. If they come with a long list of, so then I fired that lawyer and I hired the next one, and then you know what? Nobody is ever going to make that person happy, and so unfortunately, sometimes you have no choice. We all have to support our families. We have to make a living, right? Well, you may take those clients, but you know they're a potential problem. You're going to document your file better. You're going to make a point to communicate really clearly and directly, and you're going to cut them loose sooner than you might otherwise. If they're rude to your staff, if my secretary doesn't like somebody, I mean, that's pretty much a death knell in my world, because these are the people, because if they can't be nice to your staff, if they can't, then how are you going to represent them? How are you going to be a good lawyer for them? Unreasonable or irrational expectations. I see this a lot in family law cases where the family law lawyers get sued, and so many times it's not about the money. Every time I speak to all the family law lawyers, it's like I come home, my husband loves it because I'm so sweet. It's like, can I get you a sandwich? But a lot of family law cases, it's about revenge. It's about, you betrayed me. It's about the kids and winning versus what our litigation system, which is set up for, which is dollars and making sure kids' best interests are taken care of in the family law context. It's not about revenge. It's not about making him feel bad or making it harder for him and his new paramour or whatever it's going to be. And so I think a lot of times I've seen family law lawyers whose clients come in and they really do have very unrealistic expectations. Many get hired. I need the meanest lawyer in town because my husband hired XYZ. And To me, that would be a huge red flag because we are practicing within the ethical rules. We can take every advantage, but we can't be what that person probably wants us to be. Annoying personalities. And I could speak to this just because I've been told I fall in that category sometimes. Okay, so another trap, not knowing what you don't know. So here, who in here knows what PACA is? Well, I had a client who didn't either. Oh, see, I had a client who represents, I wish I didn't. I had a client who represented, had a small business came to him, said, we're going to sell our business. They sold nuts. And so, fine, he does all the transaction deals over. 2 years later, the client comes back and sues him and says, oh, by the way, there's this lien under this statute called the Perishable and Agricultural Something Act. And it's like a super lien that if you're an owner of a company that sells agricultural and perishable agricultural goods, you're liable. And it never even occurred to this lawyer that there was such a thing out there. He looked at it, he protected them with all kinds of indemnities and whatnot. Well, you know, it didn't, and so we had to deal with that. I didn't know that act was out there. I didn't know, but there are a lot of laws like that. And so Google is really a great thing. You know, what laws apply to produce and agricultural companies? And then you could take that and then maybe go to Westlaw or to the law books. But in our world, it's really important to know there's a lot out there that we don't know. And so, you know, when I think of that, I just remember opening the books, because this is back in the days when we actually did our research in books, and there it was. It was this huge lien liability that wouldn't go away. Conflicts of interest are always a huge issue, and I have a question for you, Cameron, not to put you on the spot, but when you have a lawyer who has a problem, who has acknowledged a problem, or when you see lawyers like that, how much does a lawyer have to tell their client?
Oh, well, that would be when I refer you to the ethics lawyer, the two ethics lawyers at the state bar, because I don't really know the answer to that. And we have to be real careful in my office not to practice law. So I do that, but I'd say, are you feeling stress about that decision? Are you feeling anxious? Well, I can help you with that. So forgive me for not answering the question. I have a couple more
Go ahead,
tips,
jump in.
and then my part will be finished. We talked about AID, which is helping others. You help others all the time. Your organization does. But remember, when you ask for help, you both get that surge. Okay, number 9 tip is expand your spirituality or consciousness. Now that's nothing heavy. It's just the idea that be sure you're doing something that you find meaningful and love what you're doing. I just fell into this job 9 years ago when I decided to go back to work. It is perfect for me. I am a person in recovery, and with the 3 martini lunch, it wasn't doing me any good. So I had 30 years of sobriety. I am a person in recovery from anxiety. And I was a probate lawyer for so many years. I know all about revenge and greed and high expectations. I deserve $1 million out of this estate. Yes, you do, but there's $10,000 in this estate. So all of those things are true. Now, Alice and I talked about sort of our consciousness and where we are in our lives. I am perfectly fit for a job. I call to find out what are my pension benefits if I retire at 80 and at 85. Can you imagine? And this is to work by choice, not because I have to. Allison has found that peace and serenity within her practice. So I want you to look for that higher purpose and find it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is humor, and I'm glad you're such a fun crowd because we love to hear you laugh. Now, there's even signs that say, if you smile and don't mean it, you get that surge. So let's try that now, okay? And what I'm going to advise you about the humor and finding positive people in your life, I've had 2 marriages. The second one was a marriage made in heaven. Now, I'm very sad to say, and I want to give a lot of credit to Terry Hill here, my sweet and perfect husband is in heaven. And Terry has been asking for help, has been such an important part of my life. She's had grief and loss in her life, and she's helped me so much. I'm very grateful to you. Back to humor. I know about in-laws, I know about exes, I know about step this and half that. Don't spend much time with those people, because negative people can bring you down. Now, of course, do your duty as a family member. See your in-laws briefly, and not too often. But look for funny people, funny movies, funny books. And I think we've got a good president here. She's pretty funny herself, Dana. So hats off to you for your humor. That is a good mix of wellness. Now, I will ask maybe Rebecca, in charge of a law school, would you put these out front so that everyone has a mandatory assignment to take a homework? Remember paper? Now, it's all on. But, oh, dear. Well, see, I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, and I will apologize and make amends to the waiter. I think this is a good time to come back to you, Alison.
Yeah, and we're all just kind of watching. We're going to wrap it up because we're coming to the end of the time, and we have other things to talk, lots of other things that we could cover. If you take anything away from this, I would say take 2 things: is recognize when you are getting onto thin ice, and the most important thing is set up a safety net, whether it be a friend who also practices, whether it be someone in your firm, maybe not someone even in your same practice area, whether it be just someone you met here. If you have someone who you can call up one day and say, I've got this dilemma, what do I do? And the answer really might be, I don't know, and trying to read those disciplinary rules is, kind of hard to get through them. Maybe we better, let's go call someone. Let's go find a different answer. But someone who can help you, because a lot of times we start blowing things up in our head, right? It's like, I keep going back to, I missed this deadline. And you start thinking, that's it. The client's I'm going to get fired. And the next thing you know, you're out looking at your resume thinking it's time, I'm going to have to leave because they're going to fire me over a stupid, it's important, but come on. And so I think that if you have someone who can kind of keep you and give you that perspective, it's really, I get to do that every day because as our firm's general counsel, I see all kinds of stuff. But I had recently a lawyer comes in and she got one of those letters from the state bar that said someone made a grievance complaint and it was dismissed before you even saw it. And she went off the deep end. And I was like, well, did you read the letter? It's not a grievance. So find that person, whoever it is, and stick with them. Okay?
This was fantastic. I wish I heard